Hey, Strong Mind, Strong Body listeners, I'm Angie Miller. And coming up in this episode, I talked to Dr. Sweta Vikram, and we talk about Eastern medicine's influence on health and well being. So, what we really started out was talking about why those late night gym sessions might be sabotaging your sleep. But what Dr. Vikram does is she has this beautiful way of taking Eastern medicine and bringing it to us in a palatable way of things that we can consider, like what's a late day cup of coffee do to our system, or what is staying up too late do to our system. And she has this wonderful perspective based on science, and I think you will love the episode. So when you're finished listening, I hope you will like, follow, and subscribe. Hey everyone, welcome to Strong Mind, Strong Body. I'm your host, Angie Miller. Today, I have a very special guest on. She's been on a couple of times, actually. Her name is Sweta Vikram, Dr. Sweta Vikram. And Dr. Vikram is a best-selling author. She is also a global speaker, and she is a doctor of Ayurveda. And the thing about Sweta that I love about her is she's able to take her Eastern medicine influence and bring it into the Western world and make what she knows, bring it to us in a concise, informative way where we don't all have to become doctors of Ayurvedic medicine, but we can pull from that Eastern mentality and we can bring it into what we know and make sense of it and become even wholer, more healthy versions of ourselves. So I'm going to bring in Dr. Vikram and have her introduce herself.
Hi, Angie.
Hello. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well because fall is my favorite season. I can wear a jacket. These little things make me very happy. And I'm always happy to speak with you.
You know what? I love fall too. It's a great season, isn't it? With all the color and all the change. I don't love winter, but if we could just pause at fall, I think that would be amazing.
Yes, I'm with you on that.
Yes. So, Sweta, the reason why I'm having you back on is because you had written an article about like circadian rhythms, and I was very intrigued by that. And so what I titled our episode is Why Your Late Night Gym Sessions Are Sabotaging Your Sleep, because I thought that would get people's attention. And I'm not here to say that everybody who works out late at night is not sleeping well, but there is some really interesting information, Sweta, that you can inform us of, again, to bring in that Eastern influence into a Western mentality, things that we can learn about. And that even if we're not going to deep dive into Ayurvedic medicine, I think that I love to pull from all different influences so that I can be as strong in mind and body as possible and take in all the information. And then what I always tell everybody is take what you need, leave the rest behind.
I love that philosophy. I absolutely do. And our needs evolve as well. So, right, what you need today, you might, and that's the beauty of Ayurveda. Everything is seasonal. So the Ayurvedic approach to time and energy is Ayurveda divides the day into 24-hour day into 3 cycles. And each cycle is dominated by one dosha. So going back to the point that you made, Angie, about why, according to Ayurveda, a lot of people shouldn't be exercising towards the end of the day is because that's the kapha time. So what I mean by that is kapha is that earth energy. Kapha is that heavy energy. So the cycle or the part of the clock that kapha falls under is 6 to 10 a.m. and then 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Hence, if you end up sleeping late, you might notice like, oh, I feel a little bit puffy. Oh, I feel lethargic. Oh, you know what? I don't feel like moving. And that's because we've got into the kapha phase of the morning. But the same thing, when you look at animals and, Mother Nature is such a beautiful teacher and we are a miniature of nature. So if we were to get back home at the end of the day, do our dinner, wind down, you are naturally grounding yourself versus imagine going to the gym. So you're getting this burst of energy. And to your point, I get it. people live in different, not just time zones, different capacities, right? In terms of the commitments that they have. I'd rather somebody exercise at 7 in the evening than not exercise throughout their life. But it's like, can we reduce the intensity then? Can we not do a 10K at 10 p.m.? Instead, can we do a gentle yoga? So the whole idea is this is the time for grounding, gentle movement. And if when we do like an aggressive workout, it can really upset your energy movement and also the quality of sleep.
Okay, so I have a question for you because I know there are a lot of people out there going. So, for instance, I just did a keynote in a major fitness company last Friday, and I'm going to go and do their workout tonight, and it's at 6:45. And already my system is kind of doing a mild freak out because I'm not used to working out that late at night, and I'm not the best sleeper. So I'm like, oh, it's already in my head. But what about the people who say, okay, that might be true, but I've been working out for 20 years late at night and I sleep like a baby?
Do they really? Because we all believe a lot of things about ourselves. One of the reasons when we tell people don't take dosha quizzes online, because we all believe certain things about ourselves. So I would really love to hear from these people, like, how many times are you waking up? Maybe you go to bed at a certain hour and you are in bed until, for 8 hours, but what is the quality of sleep? What are your dreams like? How is your digestion? How is your mood? Everything is interconnected, Angie.
Well, and also, Sweta, I have to clarify something. We're not talking about the 6:45 p.m. workout that I'm talking about. For me, that's late. You're, I believe, talking about those who might feel like hitting the gym at 9 or 10 at night. That, I believe, is what you're talking about, correct? Like a late night workout, right?
Absolutely. I mean, traditionally, if I'm looking at the textbooks, I would say, 6 to 10 p.m. is the time to slow down, wind down. It's, when we look at animals, birds especially, that's when they start flying out. You see flocks of birds. Even though I live in the city, I still see them. Animals know when to retreat. In modern day living, that's when we go out for a drink or we see friends, or we're doing, you and I both, speaking is part of what we do for a living and, part of a purpose. All of that happens, but can we also create those exceptions of, like you said, if it's a 6:45 workout, do you have time to wind down after that? But if you're doing a 10 p.m. workout, by the time you're done, you come back, you shower, it's midnight. You might be hungry, and that's a whole other conversation. Every organ, and this is not me saying this is evidence-based science, every organ flushes itself out at a certain time. I'm just making this up. Let's just say the liver cleanses itself at 11 p.m. Now there, we've come back from a workout, we are tired, understandably, you didn't eat dinner because you were in a meeting with your manager and then you needed to get that workout, and now you're going to sit down at midnight, eat steak or potato chips. Whatever toxins are in your body, they didn't get flushed out. So now we have to wait until 11 p.m. of the next day. So over a period of time, the toxins start to accumulate. And then Ayurveda will tell you diseases don't happen overnight for the most part. They're 6 stages. And they're always signs and symptoms. So for someone who would say, hey, I sleep well, I would ask them, what does well mean to them?
Yeah.
How many times do you wake up at night? Mood, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning? Are you groggy? Do you feel lethargic? Do you feel unmotivated? Is your motivation on the end of the day? So then we are going against circadian rhythm.
Right. Well, and also, again, we were talking about like 10 at night. We weren't talking about, to your point, when I get home from a 6:45 class, I have plenty of time to reset. I can drink sleepy tea. I can sit down. I can ground. I can decompress. So it's more about the decisions I'm going to make when I get home tonight, after I beat up a punching bag, by the way. But let's move on. So I think a lot of people, me sometimes included, hit that 3 p.m. energy crash, where I call it where I want to eat my refrigerator, not even the ingredients inside, but just the refrigerator itself, where it's like I can't get enough food in me. And no matter what I eat, it's as if it's not actually hitting my system, right? Like I'm just crashing and burning. So you talk about this being Vata time. What does that mean in plain English? Like, how can we work with it instead of fighting it?
Okay, so Vata time of the day is typically 2 to 6 a.m. and then 2 to 6 p.m. So I'll address the morning bit just in a second. Sorry, the evening bit, but in the morning, that's a great time for your spiritual practices. Vata is light, it's creative, it's great for spirituality. And if you're a writer, for me, one of the first things I do every morning is I meditate and I write. It's the Vata time of the day. But to your point, it's that 3 p.m. slump. We all hit it. And the tendency is we think, oh, let me get that extra cup of coffee or a snack or that cup of tea. It doesn't really help because too much caffeine will aggravate Vata, right? So if I have the time, I'll go stand in the sun, even if it's for 5 minutes. Just that gentle little bit of movement is distraction for the brain. But also, like when the sun rays hit the eyes, it's almost like an awakening from within. And if I don't have the time, Angie, but we all have those days, where whether we like it or not, we get caught in the busyness trap because that's the world we live in. I'll do alternate nostril breathing. It's great for balancing Vata. It's great for balancing both the hemispheres of the brain. It's great for circulation. And sometimes I feel, all of us do that. We create these habits. And then we tell ourselves, this is what I do because this is what I need. And it's a chicken and egg situation, right? So I realized that, like, I'm a new coffee drinker. I've been drinking chai my entire life. So I'm like, ooh, I have that cup of coffee and I'm perky and I like that. And then I had to tell myself, you're perky throughout the day. We don't need that up an extra notch. What can you do? And that's when it's like, just literally being out in the sun. And if you are in the Northern Hemisphere, winter's unfortunately around the corner. So it's going to get dark at 3:30. So, or 4, depending on where you live. So maybe just step out for 5 minutes. We all have 5 minutes, no matter where you work, just to get a little bit of sun in your face. And it's the best way of just waking up, not just spiritually, but energetically. And like, I think it adds life to your cells.
Well, and I really actually like that a lot because I love how you said it's a distraction for the brain, because there are so many times that I get that 3 p.m. And I'm like, I need to, when I look at it in hindsight, I go, you should have just distracted yourself. Like you should have done a grounding exercise, or, I love that, just stepping outside or even a 5-minute walk, just a little distraction for the brain. And plus, all I have to do is walk outside or stand outside and I'm automatically invigorated. And so I think that is very powerful, and it's simple. It's low hanging fruit. Like, hey, your client says they get 3 p.m. crashes. Tell them to step outside. Tell them to do some type of breathing exercise, whether it's alternate nostril or not, or tell them to take a quick walk around the block. I think that's perfect. So can I move on to something else?
Yes, please.
Okay. Because I think that I love those nuggets that are like, oh, that's so easy. Let's talk about late dinner habits. It's interesting because once again, they say that it's calories, obviously it's calories in, calories out. It doesn't really matter what time you consume the calories. But I know for me, I never remember my dreams unless I eat late at night. And then I have these wild dreams. And so people who eat late, like this is kind of a joke with me and my friends, because my friends will be like, hey, you want to meet at 6:30 for dinner? And I was like, I'm going to raise my hand to be the old lady who says, how about 5:30? And they all make fun of me. And I give the excuse that by the time we get served, blah, 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 it's going to be 6:30 anyway. And then I tell them, old people beat the crowd. And, but I really don't like going out even at 6:30. It's 8:00 by the time we all get served. And so what is the deal with like late night dinner? Even if we don't gain weight, why could that be bad for us?
So I love that you share that example, because I am just like you. I need to eat on time. And to answer your question, science will tell you we need between 3 and 4 hours between our last meal and when we go to bed. So for people who say, oh, but I eat at 8:30 and I'm in bed by 10, we haven't given our body enough time to digest the food. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's lingering around in your system. And, we've all had that. Thanksgiving, classic example, or any of the holiday gatherings, right? It's people continue to eat. Like Thanksgiving could start in the afternoon and people, the football game happens, then there's board games happening, and it just gets fun and loud, and people are eating pie up until 9:30, 10. And the next is like, oh, I feel sick, I feel heartburn. It's because we didn't give ourselves enough time between our last meal and a sleep time, right? So that, and also going back to what we were talking about, every organ flushes itself out at a certain hour. So an exception of a Thanksgiving or a dinner with a friend or family member occasionally here and there will hopefully will not kill us, right? But it's when it becomes a habit to eat late. I was at a conference in Spain last week, and a few people fell sick, and they said, they serve food really late in Spain. So if dinner is served at 10:30, and then you have drinks, and by the time you get done is 1, and you go to bed at 2:30, you're up at 6:30 again. A 20-year-old might be able to cope with it. Most adults won't. And with that heat, it just caught up. So I think that's why the body is so beautiful. It tells us, look at me, I'm giving you the signs. We fall sick when the body is screaming because we push ourselves and have these notions of what makes us young. How should I live? So this is how young people live. And that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because every time I go to Europe, I find that to be true. Like even when I went to Greece and we would walk the streets and I would look at everybody and they're out eating at an outdoor restaurant at 11 at night. And I was like, oh, wow, either I'm really old or it's just a cultural thing, to your point. But I always struggle even more with sleep when I'm in those environments because my body does not want to be up that late because my body gets me up at the same time, no matter what. So it's really hard to adjust. But so let's say that we have listeners who have these very demanding jobs, or they don't have a choice. Like they teach the late night class, or they work the gym at the late night, or we've got somebody who works in, they're an emergency responder, and the only time they can work out at 10. What's one thing they could do? Just a tip that they could do to make it have less impact on their system, if you will.
So nothing I would recommend, don't do like heavy weights or high intensity. I shouldn't say heavy weights. I would recommend not doing high intensity. That's a lot of pressure on the body. Maybe the days or nights when they work late nights, do something gentle, like a gentle yoga or just stretches, or even if it's resistance training, can we do more repetitions but lighter weight? So just being kinder to the body. And if again, like Angie and I said, eating late doesn't work for us, but I also understand the privilege of being able to make those choices. Sometimes our jobs don't allow for that. So then maybe have like a light soup for dinner. Save the steak or the pasta or anything which is heavy for lunch. So because then what Ayurveda tells us, we are a miniature of nature, and the sun is the strongest around between noon and 3. That's when our digestive fire is the strongest. So, so if you're going to eat that big meal, and we're human beings, life shouldn't be about deprivation, do that during lunch, because then you have the rest of the day to digest it. Versus you eat a big meal and then you go to bed, it's just sitting there.
It's interesting because I remember, you had talked about digestive fire, and a lot of people will just have like a quick salad or something like that at lunch because they're in a hurry and they're like, I'll eat my big meal at night. But then I feel like people's mind says, well, if I eat a great big lunch, I'm really going to crash and burn at 3. Is that not true? Is that just a story we're telling ourselves?
We are. And I'm so glad you asked that, because it was something that I was going to address in our conversation, that when I tell, have your big lunch, it's not a big proportion. It's not a big portion. Very often when we say big lunch, I've had clients who were like, oh, I fell asleep. And I was like, can you describe how much you ate? And it turns out to be a big portion. So by big, what I mean is, if you're going to eat meat, you're going to eat your vegetables, you're going to eat your carbs, eat that for lunch. Let dinner be something light. So you're not fighting against the rhythm of nature or your body or your well-being and pushing it. Now let's process the day, let's process the information, and let's digest and process this food. No, let it be simple so it goes through.
Oh, okay. So that makes sense. It's not that you're eating a big portion, but you are eating the heavier stuff, if you will, at lunchtime.
Yes.
Huh. Okay, that's good to keep in mind. I like that. So those people who complain about poor sleep or low energy. Okay. I may or may not be one of them. What are some questions that they could ask? Like maybe 2 questions they could ask themselves to identify if timing is the issue.
Right. So, firstly, checking in with themselves, what did they eat and at what time? If, like I was saying, if someone has had a bowl of soup, the probability of their sleep being impacted by their soup versus a big steak, whole other conversation, right? Also, what was their day about, and did they process their day? What I mean by that is, sometimes we come back from work and people will pour themselves a glass of whatever it is their poison is, and we are still not navigating our emotions. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, 80% of the diseases start from the mind, and Western science will tell you repressed emotions also lead to diseases. So it's being able to have these conversations are very important. But a simple thing which all of us can do, but most of us choose not to do, is put all your gadgets away an hour before you get into bed.
Yeah. Well, I think the processing emotions is, I like the what did you eat, but I think the processing emotions, because a lot of times now before I go to bed, I journal because I need to get it out. If I don't unpack it, it's going to unpack itself at an inopportune time and wake me up. And literally, I cannot emphasize that enough. Like if you don't unpack what's in there, it's going to unpack itself. It really is. It's like a leaking, something in your home that's leaking. Just because you don't see the leak doesn't mean it's not still going to leak. And so it's like your emotional toxins are leaking. And
Right.
I know this because they sometimes wake me up. And so, not that I have emotional toxins, but I mean people who do, haha. And so I think that that's a great thing. Like I will often journal because to your point, we're not processing our day. We're telling ourselves, just go to bed and sleep it off. I have a sister who says that all the time, go to bed and sleep it off. I'm like, how's that work for you? Because that certainly does not work for me. So I think that's a great thing. So speaking of eating and, processing emotions, a lot of people, I think a lot more people than what we realize, because there's a shame around this. I think a lot more people than what we realize stress eat or emotional eat. And I think that we don't often talk about it because there's some shame associated with it. But how does eating at the wrong time, according to the ancient Ayurvedic clock, how does that actually make stress and anxiety worse?
So an example would be late night eating, right? If at midnight we're eating this big bowl of pasta, then you most likely will not be able to sleep for the next 2-3 hours. And if imagine the next day there's a big presentation, or you're seeing a client, or you're giving a talk, then it increases that anxiety of, oh, I haven't slept, I'm going to mess this up. So it's the simple choices which are under our control that we can navigate. Right. And we've all done stress eating, emotional eating at some point of our lives. Right. But it's also paying attention to it. OK, what is causing it? Right. If you're not a therapist, please don't self-diagnose. And I'm not suggesting you self-diagnose at all. But if you journal these things, then when you talk to your therapist or your doctor, it really helps them understand what your triggers are. And you can work together versus them walking into a blank space and figuring everything out. So I think that can be, that's one way in which anxiety increases. But also I've had clients who then wonder, oh, have I gained weight? Because it's a body image issue. So people have their own stories that they are navigating. And when we live by the Ayurvedic clock or, eat a certain way, go to bed a certain way, I just feel the healthy habits, they're almost like self-care boundaries that we create for ourselves. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, oh, like you said, 8 o'clock by the time you're done, it's too late. I feel the same way. So for a lot of our friends, we meet them for lunch on Saturdays instead of dinners now. I'm like, guys, we can still hang out till 6 or 7. You're home. You still have a few hours in the evening. It took a little bit of mindset shift. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's almost like you have your weekend back. I said, so I think these little conversations are also necessary where over defining what is cool, what is not cool is really not helping anyone.
Yeah. Well, and it's so true. Like meeting for lunch, to your point, like invites a whole different concept of, for one thing, you're out there usually like for instance, in Charlotte, we can eat outside. I love this time of year because being outside is beautiful. So you're in the sunshine, you're absorbing sunshine, you're with friends, you're doing all the things that are so healthy, and you're doing it midday versus late at night, which often will lead into a late night because conversations get started. So let's talk about that afternoon coffee habit. I will say that this is one habit I don't have, thank goodness. I love my coffee in the morning, but I try to never do that coffee at 3 p.m. But what would you say to people who are like, oh, I just need that afternoon cup of coffee because I can feel myself, ugh.
It's that step out and get some sun in your face. The sun rays will wake you up just the way we believe caffeine does, or drink an herbal tea. For me, sometimes it's like a mug of warm water that helps. All you need is some warmth, right? So it could be in the form of sun rays, the most nourishing ways. Some days it's a cup of coffee that you need. Other days it could be literally a cup of herbal tea, warm water, or just a bit of gentle movement. Again, it's something that you and I were talking about. Very often we as human beings, we tell ourselves stories. This is what I need because otherwise this is cause and effect. Is that really true?
Yeah. Well, we build our lives around the stories. We create personal narratives and then we build our lives around those narratives. And, is it truth or is it your truth? And so, but to everyone, their truth is their truth. And that's the thing. But it is until you maybe question your personal truth and say, but what if there's some missing gaps in here? What if I could think differently? And I agree, just kind of stepping out, or again, what you had said earlier, which was just however you worded that, but basically distracting your brain. Yeah.
Right.
Like just distract your brain with something. What do you think about like those sun lamps for people who live in really cold or really rainy climates? Do you think those do the job like in the winter time when there's no sun?
I have one at home because I wake up way before sunrise. And I love having that because when I turn it on, my brain knows it's not the sun, but it feels different from a lamp, like a usual lamp that we have at home. And there's something really warm and enduring about having a sun lamp. So I've really appreciated it. And it's something that I recommend to a lot of my clients and even loved ones, who've moved from warmer places to colder places where winter can feel really isolating and brutal, to just have that. And, if you can have it automated, by the time you step out of your room, the sun lamp is on and you feel, and so much of it, Angie, is what we feel, what we tell ourselves we feel. Like for me, having that sun lamp creates that warmth and that space of light, which is enough to get me through to when the sunrise happens.
I'm glad you said that because I've always wanted to buy one and I've never really known, are they really legit? Do they work? So I think that's great. So Shweta, before we wrap up, if someone could follow just one piece from ancient timing or ancient wisdom, one piece from Ayurvedic medicine, what would you recommend they start with tomorrow? Like what's a small habit they could build in?
The small habit would be start your day with a mug of warm water. And I'm not talking about apple cider vinegar or honey or lemons, just a mug of warm water. The reason I say this is even if you've gone to bed late, your digestion might be kaput, you might be navigating constipation, a mug of warm water helps with peristalsis. A mug of warm water is very nourishing for your nervous system. It's really good for detoxifying your insides. So it takes nothing. We all have taps and stovetops, things like that at home, just like you don't want to burn your tongue. So not scalding hot, plain warm water. And it's very meditative, Angie. It takes 3-4 minutes to drink that mug. And think of a busy mom, right? Or an executive who is working with a global team. This is their 5 minute. This is their gift to self where they anchor themselves in the day before the day takes over.
Now, I always think of cold water. Why warm?
Warm water, again, it really flushes out toxins. Cold water doesn't do that. So when you think of it, when you warm, imagine we've eaten pizza or wings, right? And you try to wash your hands with cold water, the grease still is there. Versus if you wash your hands with warm water, it's way cleaner. And that's the logic behind it. It's moving away those toxins. And again, from an Ayurvedic perspective, nervous system is governed by Vata, and Vata tends to run cold. And when we apply the opposite qualities, we bring it back to balance. So anxiety, constipation, sleeplessness, they're all forms of Vata imbalance. And warm water, opposite quality of Vata, is a simple way of just lowering it down.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know. I'm going to try that. Well, Sweta, thank you so much. Thank you for bringing in Eastern medicine. Thank you for making it palatable, because I do think that a lot of people are one way or the other like, ooh, I'm not going into the woohoo stuff. But I think that, again, if we draw from many different types of wisdoms and we get palatable insights from all different forms or beliefs, I do believe that we can find a way to condition and strengthen our body inside and out. And that's what I love about having you on my show. So thank you again. And before we go, is there a way that people could reach you if they wanted to ask you a question?
Absolutely. Just go onto my website, which is my name, swetavikram.com. You can book a free complimentary 20-minute discovery call with me if you have any questions. I have a freebie, a podcast. I write a lot of Ayurvedic blog posts. Everything is on my website. And it was so great to talk to you, Angie. Thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. And to all of our Strong Mind, Strong Body listeners, I cannot wait to see you next week.